everybody, welcome back to Papel Podcast. My name is Michael and today we are going to do something very special. We are going to be remodeling this little guy. It's Papel. So this is the first From Art to Model episode of 2019, which is very special. What we're going to be doing on today's episode is we're going to be using the model that we make today of the remodeled Papel for essentially a brand new introduction video and kind of style and look for Papel Podcast. So this is going to be very exciting. Even though Papel is a very simple model to make, it was an interesting challenge. So without further ado, let's go from art to model. Okay, so here we are back modeling again. The way we start out this model in particular is with the classic Pangyas Papel model from Pangyas PC. As you can see, it's just the one that we all know and love. And I basically did that kind of like I've done in previous episodes, where I take the old model, analyze how they constructed it, and then kind of use that skills and advice to continue the new model that we're going to remodel. So as you can see here, I'm actually doing a technique that I've never really done before, especially on this little series, which is literally kind of recreate the model from scratch using the original model as a outline. So I'm literally modeling it basically polygon by polygon to make sure it matches up perfectly shape-wise. Obviously, something I am doing here is adding in more support loops and more polygons where it needs to be, because the original model is quite low poly. I do want this remodel to obviously be higher poly than the one that's in Pangyas PC, because that game came out in 2004. We can do a bit better by now. But yeah, this is a really interesting process, and it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. And I'm glad that I did it, because I get to practice this technique and kind of see what shape I need. As you can see, the base of the model is already pretty much done at this point. I just have to set up the extrusion and support loops here for the ears, which was something very interesting to me that I never really paid attention to until I had to do this project. Was Papel apparently has three-dimensional ears, which I never knew. If you look at the back of his ears, they're actually fully modeled. It's not just like a flat plane that just, bends and folds out. It's actually all connected together, and it's all a part of a 3D mesh. So that was really interesting, and I don't think I've ever noticed that before in Pangyas PC. So yeah, that was something interesting. Something else as well is, you would have thought Papel would be hollow, but apparently the top of Papel is actually closed off in the PC version, so that's kind of what I did here too. And then as you can see, this final step of modeling, I did the little remodeled kind of handle strap thing. So now we're in Substance Painter, of course. We're getting ready and getting set up for texturing. Now, texturing was really interesting because I based it purely off the art style from Pangyas Mobile. I didn't want to just replicate the Papel from Pangyas PC. I wanted to keep this up to date with the latest game, which is why I referenced Pangyas Mobile quite a bit in this. And the design differences between the PC one and the mobile one are quite subtle, but they're definitely there. One of the main differences you'll see later on is in the eyes and the mouth. The eyes have a much thinner line, and the mouth is a bit of a different shape. So yeah, it's very interesting. And just the way that it's textured, I really wanted to make sure it kind of looked like real paper. It has like this kind of moisture, like kind of subtle dirt effect to it, which really adds to the whole thing. So in the Pangyas Mobile version of Papel, there's these kind of crease lines. They're very subtle, but the whole texture is hand painted. So I kind of tried to do that effect here, and it worked out pretty well, but it did take a little bit to get right. And you can see I'm just kind of polishing things, making sure that it looks correct and all flows correctly. But yeah, I am really happy with how this is coming out so far. And you guys will see where this kind of fits into the bigger picture. There's a reason why I'm remodeling Papel, and as I mentioned in the intro, it is, essentially to do a new version of the introduction to Papel podcast. So you'll see what that entails in the next episode of From Art to Model when we get to animating it. But for now, we're just focusing on modeling it. So yeah, the ears were pretty easy to do. There's a lot of gradients, as you can see. I scale up here, and yeah, that's just kind of an effect that's used a lot on Papel. These were very early tests for the face texture, and it didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. He looks a bit derpy there, so I ended up fixing that later on. And then, as you can see, there's the final face, and this is the whole texture kind of, fixed and put on correctly. But as things progress, you can see things are getting much better, much more realistic, and something that's really cool about, just having it in a modern texture format means that we can put bump mapping on it. So, for example, the face where the eyes and the mouth are, they have a normal map that kind of protrudes a little bit. So if you kind of think of it as something printed on a paper, but like the text is a bit bumpy and popped out of the card, that's kind of the effect that happens here. And the same but in reverse for the ears, they kind of cave in a little bit. It's very subtle, but you'll see that it adds a lot of depth and a lot of realism where it isn't found in Pangyas Mobile. And then finally, as the last pass, I am just basically coating over a subtle brush, which adds a bit of like highlights and shadowing and different depth effects like that. But at this point, it's pretty much complete. So yeah, I was really happy with how this model turned out. I'm honestly quite surprised. It's been a while since I've ever remodeled something like a caddy from Pangyas. So to see that Papel looks like this now, with so much detail and could clearly, in my opinion, fit into the Pangyas universe, really shows how far I've come as a 3D environment artist. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and join us next week when we animate Papel for the intro, and you guys finally get to see what this whole plan is going to turn out to be. So until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the greens.